Buck Rogers 2587, Never Again. An audio story for the next 500 years.
The year is 2087. NASA launches the last of America's deep space probes. In a freak mishap, Ranger 3, its pilot, Captain William "Buck" Rogers, and his crew are blown out of their trajectory into an orbit that freezes the life support systems and returns them to Earth. 500 years later.
Part 1. The Last Days of Captain William "Buck" Rogers. 2087. Trump Space Force Base Armstrong, formerly Cape Canaveral. Day 1. The offer. Captain William "Buck" Rogers was 36 years old, which in 2087 was considered middle-aged for an active astronaut. The average deep space pilot was 24 now, children, really, raised entirely under the Trump Dynasty, their neural implants filtering out dangerous thoughts before they could form. Buck had refused the implant in 2079. It cost him 2 promotions and a marriage. Worth it. He stood in the Hall of Eternal Loyalty, a marble tomb to the Trump family's ego, and stared at the portraits. Donald J. 45th and 47th. Donald Jr. 49th. Ivanka 52nd, never confirmed by the Senate but served anyway. Eric 55th, resigned in scandal. Barron 58th, the quiet one who actually seemed to hate it. And the current matriarch, President Mira Trump, 61st, who had just signed an executive order making criticism of the dynasty punishable by algorithmic correction, a polite term for personality overwrite. You're being reactivated, Rogers. General Marcus Trump Fuentes, a man whose only qualifications were his bloodline and a complete lack of shame, slid a tablet across the obsidian desk. Buck didn't salute. At 36, he was old enough to remember when saluting meant something. I fly cargo to Mars, that's it. You flew the Armstrong through a gravity fold in 2045. You were 24. You saved 3 members of the first family. 2 of them, Buck corrected. I let Eric's capsule cook for an extra 30 seconds. He survived, barely. The general's eye twitched. That story was not in the official record. The tablet showed anomaly 734B, a structure, artificial, older than humanity, sitting at the edge of the Oort cloud. We're sending the Roosevelt's ghost, the general said. You're the only pilot who's survived a fold. Then you need better pilots. We need compliant pilots, which you are not, but you are effective. So here's the deal, Captain, the general leaned in. Your wife, Dr. Mira Chen, is in Re-education Resort 7, Arizona, do this mission. Bring back what's out there, and she walks, full pardon, real one, not simulated. Buck's jaw tightened. He hadn't seen Mira in 8 years. Her crime, teaching real history to middle schoolers, the fall of democracy, the slow slide into dynastic rule, the things every citizen should know. The fold will throw us forward, Buck said. Ship time weeks, Earth time. 5 centuries, give or take. Buck did the math. 2587. Everyone he knew would be dead, including Myra, unless the deal was a lie, which it almost certainly was. But the chance. When do I leave? 3 days. Day 2, the goodbye. At 36, Buck had fewer ghosts than an older version of himself would have. But the ones he had were sharper. He spent his last day in the Legacy Zone, one of the last neighborhoods in former Florida where an unimplanted human could still walk without being flagged. His neighbors were old soldiers, banned journalists, and one former Supreme Court justice who'd been retired in 2071 after ruling against the dynasty's Media Consolidation Act. His apartment was small, filled with physical books, illegal to own without a permit, a 3D printed bust of Eugene Debs, and a single photograph, a woman with cropped gray hair and a smile that said, "I know something you don't." Her name was Dr. Mira Chen. He visited the virtual Memorial Gardens, a state-mandated simulation where citizens could interact with AI reconstructions of disappeared loved ones. The AI Myra was perfect. Too perfect. It knew what he was about to say before he said it. "You're going," she said. "Yeah. You're not coming back to this time." "Probably not." The AI paused. Then, a flicker, a raw line that shouldn't have been in the script. "Then make sure you become someone worth waiting 500 years for." Buck froze. A message, a remnant, or just a glitch in a broken system. He reached for her holographic face. His hand passed through. "I'll find you," he said, "in whatever comes next." The AI reset. Her eyes went blank. Then the pleasant, empty smile returned. "Would you like to hear a memory from 2074, Captain?" He walked out. Day 3, launch. Buck was the oldest person on the ship by 12 years. The crew. Commander Lena Ocampo, 24. Brilliant navigator, fully implanted, believed the dynasty was divinely appointed. Buck had 3 days to either crack that faith or learn to work around it. Engineer Pax Johnson, 26, non-binary, joined Space Force to get their mother out of a re-education resort. It worked. Mom was free in body, but her personality had been adjusted. Pax was quietly furious. Buck recognized a fellow traveler, Medic Tasha Korapati, 22, the baby. Quiet, observant. She had a subdermal chip containing the entire band archive of pre-dynasty history. She'd shown Buck on the gantry. "If we don't come back," she whispered, "someone has to remember." The Roosevelt's Ghost was a beautiful ship, sleek, powerful, built from the bones of the old republic. Eleanor Roosevelt's face was etched into the hull, a silent protest against the dynasty that had renamed everything else. T-1 minute. President Kira Trump appeared on the viewscreen, her face worn but still commanding, her eyes dead in the way only absolute power can produce. "Captain Rogers, find the anomaly. Bring back whatever is there. The dynasty expects your loyalty." Buck muted her. He looked at his crew, a believer, a grudge, a memory keeper, and himself, a man who had nothing left to lose except the chance to see his wife again. "All hands," he said. "We're not flying for her. We're flying for the people who come after, the ones who will live in 2587. Let's give them something worth waking up for." The engines fired. Florida fell away. The sky turned black, and 36-year-old William Buck Rogers, too young to be bitter, too old to be naive, punched the gravity fold and disappeared from the 21st century. Part 2, 2587, The World After Tyranny. Arrival. The AI woke him gently, which was suspicious. Military AIs didn't do gentle. Captain Rogers, 500 years, 3 months, 12 days have elapsed. Your crew is in varying states of cryo-recovery. You are the first to wake. There is something you need to see. Buck's body ached. 36 felt like 60 after half a millennium in suspended animation. He pulled himself to the viewport. Earth, green, lush. No megacities, no orbital rings, no visible infrastructure at all. The Atlantic had swallowed Florida entirely. The peninsula was a shoal. The Great Lakes had merged into an inland sea. Where are the cities? Buck asked. There are none in the traditional sense. The human population is approximately 47 million, down from 387 million in 2087. They live in distributed bioregional clusters. No single settlement exceeds 5,000 individuals. Buck's stomach turned. The dynasty. The Trump dynasty fell in 2112. The last president, Trump III, was executed by popular tribunal following the Harvest Uprising. The re-education resorts were converted to memorial gardens in 2145. The implants were removed from surviving citizens in 2158. There has been no centralized government for over 400 years. Pax stumbled onto the bridge, still rubbing cryosleep from their eyes. Did I just hear that right? No government. No centralized government, the AI corrected. Governance is bioregional, consensus-based, and stateless. The concept of president is considered a historical pathology, taught alongside smallpox and reality television. Buck laughed. It was the first genuine laugh he'd had in years. Then a transmission crackled through, ancient frequency, weak signal but deliberate. Captain Rogers, welcome to 2587. My name is Mira Chen. You don't know me, but I'm your great-great-great-great-granddaughter. Mira survived the resorts. She was released in 2091. She lived to be 94. She never stopped talking about you. She left something for you, a physical archive, hidden where the dynasty would never find it. It's waiting in what used to be Georgia. The road is long. You have 3 days before the anomaly in the Oort cloud does something unexpected. Hurry. The past isn't done with you yet. Buck looked at his crew. Lena, the believer, looked like her entire worldview had just been thrown into a woodchipper. No presidents, she whispered. No order. Pax was grinning. No implants, no re-education. My mom, she would have loved this. Tasha was crying. The chip, she said. The archive I carry, it's not just history anymore, it's instructions. They built this world without knowing we were coming, and now we're here. Buck touched the cold glass of the viewport. Somewhere down there, a woman named Alara, Mira's descendant, his descendant, was waiting. Set a course for Georgia, he said, and someone find me a map. I have a family to meet. The crimes of the Trump Dynasty, 2087-2112. Before they landed, Buck made the crew listen to the history that Tasha carried in her subdermal chip. It was not the history taught in dynasty schools. It was the real history. The AI's testimony, compiled from survivor archives, tribunal records, and the secret diaries of Trump II. 1. The climate deaths, 2089-2105. The dynasty's final gift to Earth was acceleration. By 2087, when Buck launched, sea levels had already risen 14 feet. The dynasty's response was not mitigation but walls around Mar-a-Lago, around Trump Tower Atlanta, around the new presidential palace in Denver. Everyone else was on their own. 2091. The Indian subcontinent becomes largely uninhabitable due to wet bulb temperatures exceeding human tolerance. 1.2 billion people die or flee. The dynasty closes U.S. borders to all climate refugees. Ships are turned back at gunpoint. 2094, the water wars begin. The dynasty diverts the remaining Great Lakes water to California and the Southwest via a massive pipeline for a price. States that cannot pay are left to dry. The Midwest becomes the Dust Bowl too. An estimated 40 million Americans die of thirst or starvation over the next decade. 2102, the ozone collapse, a previously unknown feedback loop triggered by aerosol pollutants from the dynasty's deregulated industries. Skin cancer rates increase 800% globally. The dynasty distributes free sunscreen branded with the Trump logo. It does nothing. Total dead by 2010, approximately 2.3 billion humans globally. The dynasty's official position: natural cycles. 2. The implant mandate, 2096. By 2096, the dynasty had perfected the neural implant, not the crude versions of the 2040s, but a sophisticated device that could suppress dangerous thoughts in real time, edit memories, and induce euphoria when the user expressed loyalty. The purge of the unchipped. Anyone refusing the implant was declared a biological threat to national unity. An estimated 12 million Americans were rounded up and sent to re-education resorts. Those 4 million died, some from neglect, some from experimental procedures intended to implant them against their will. The memory wars. The dynasty systematically overwrote the historical record. The original Constitution was declared a sedition document and burned in public ceremonies in 2098. Children were taught that the Trump family had ruled since 1776, that George Washington was a distant cousin, and that democracy had been a failed experiment. Tasha played a recording from 2104, a dynasty schoolteacher singing a song to first graders. Trump, Trump, forever strong. He kept us safe when things went wrong. No more voting, no more fuss. The dynasty takes care of us. Lena, the implanted believer, turned white. I learned that song. I thought it was history. 3. The off-world colonies, 2099-2112. As Earth died, the dynasty looked to the stars. Mars was colonized in 2045, Buck's first mission. By 2099, there were 3 million humans on Mars and 500,000 in the asteroid belt. The dynasty ruled them with the same iron fist, but distance breeds rebellion. The series Revolt, 2105, asteroid miners declared independence. The dynasty sent warships. The fighting lasted 3 years. The dynasty won by destroying 2 asteroid habitats, killing 80,000 civilians. The survivors were sent to re-education resorts on Earth, a death sentence. The Xylos betrayal, 2108. The dynasty secretly made a deal with an alien species, the Xylos, trading human test subjects for technology. Thousands of disappeared political prisoners were given to the Xylos for experiments. The dynasty called them volunteers. In truth, the Xylos were sabotaging the agreement from the inside, hiding the prisoners in underground sanctuaries. But the dynasty never knew. The fall of the dynasty, 2010-2112. The end came not from outside but from within, and from the courage of those who remembered. The Harvest Uprising, 2010. By 2010, the dynasty controlled only the core of North America, a fortified zone from Denver to Atlanta. The rest of the continent had collapsed into independent bioregions, tribal federations, and anarchist collectives. The trigger was a food shipment. The dynasty had hoarded genetically modified grain in underground silos while its own people starved. A group of farmers in what had been Iowa, led by a 67-year-old former history professor named Mira Chen, organized a raid. Mira had been released from re-education in 2091, her spirit intact but her body broken. She spent the next 19 years building a quiet resistance, not with weapons, but with memory. She taught children the real history. She hid archives in caves and old server farms. And in 2010, she led 5,000 farmers in a march on the Denver Xylos. The dynasty sent drones. The farmers had no weapons, but they had something the dynasty had forgotten existed: solidarity. The drones did not fire. Their AI had been reprogrammed by a faction inside the dynasty's own military young officers who had secretly removed their implants and rediscovered their humanity. The Denver massacre that wasn't. When the drones refused to fire, President Trump III ordered ground forces to open fire. They refused to. The dynasty's own army laid down its weapons and walked over to the farmers' side. Within a week, the dynasty had lost control of every major city except the presidential palace in Denver. The tribunal, 2111-2112. The surviving Trump family members were captured trying to flee to Mars. Their ship was intercepted by the newly formed Coalition of Free Bioregions, a loose alliance of Earth's surviving communities, united for the first time in centuries. The trial lasted 18 months. It was broadcast to every surviving human settlement and to the Martian colonies, which had declared their own independence in 2111. The charges: crimes against humanity, climate acceleration, forced relocation, mass starvation; genocide, the purge of the unchipped, the re-education resort deaths; slavery, the Xylos agreement, though the truth of Xylos as rescuers came out later; conspiracy to destroy democratic governance. The accused: Trump III, age 74, president from 2089 to 2111. She showed no remorse. Her final statement: "I made the trains run on time. The weak died. That's nature." Donald Trump IV, age 51, head of the dynasty's military. He attempted to plead insanity. The tribunal showed footage of him personally ordering the series' habitat destruction. His plea was denied. Ivanka Trump III, age 47, architect of the implant program. She wept and apologized. The tribunal accepted her testimony in exchange for a reduced sentence: life in a re-education resort she had helped design. She died there in 2130. Barron Trump Jr., age 42, the quiet one. He had secretly sabotaged dynasty operations for years. The tribunal found him not guilty. He lived out his life as a farmer in what had been Nebraska, dying in 2174. His descendants still live there, integrated into the coalition. The executions, October 17, 2112. Kira III and Donald IV were executed by public hanging, a deliberate return to pre-dynasty methods, chosen by a global vote. The event was broadcast. Survivors danced in the streets. The Trump dynasty was declared legally extinct. All properties, assets, and archives were seized and opened to the public. The re-education resorts were converted into memorial museums and gardens, never to be forgotten, never to be repeated. The meeting with Mira Chen. The ghost landed in what had once been Georgia, now a lush temperate forest dotted with small, elegant settlements. No roads, no power lines, just buildings woven into the landscape, powered by solar and Xylos-grown root structures. Mira Chen was waiting in a clearing. She was 28 years old, tall, with Myra's eyes and Buck's jaw. Her skin was dark from generations of exposure to a stronger sun. She wore simple clothes, woven fiber, no synthetics, and carried no weapons. "You look like her," Buck said, stepping off the ramp. Mira smiled. It was Myra's smile. "You look like the paintings, younger though. The paintings made you look ancient. They aged me in post." They stood in silence for a moment. Then Mira stepped forward and hugged him. Buck stiffened. He hadn't been touched in kindness in years, then melted into it. She never stopped loving you, Alara whispered. She married again after the fall, had 3 children, but every night she looked at the stars and said your name. She made sure we all knew who you were, the man who left to save us. She saved me, Buck said. I was just running away. No, Alara pulled back. You were running towards something and she knew it. Come, I have something to show you. What Myra left behind. Alara led Buck and his crew into a hillside, not a cave but a grown structure. The walls were living roots woven together by Xylos technology. Inside, a single room. In the center, a metal box 2 feet square, rusted but intact. Myra's handwriting on the lid, for Buck if he ever comes home. Buck opened it. Inside. A letter, handwritten, on paper that had survived 500 years in climate-controlled stasis. Myra's hand was shaky. She was old when she wrote it, but her voice was unmistakable. Buck. If you're reading this, I'm long gone. I hope I lived well. I tried. The dynasty fell. We did it, not with weapons, with memory. We remembered who we were before they told us to forget. And we taught our children to remember. That's all resistance ever is in the end, remembering. I remarried. His name was David. He was kind. He built things with his hands. You would have liked him. I told him about you. He wasn't jealous. He said, she loved you first. I'm just lucky enough to be last. I had children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren. One of them, Alara, is probably the one reading this to you. She's stubborn like me, like you. I don't know what you'll find in 2587. I hope it's a world worth coming home to. We tried to build one. We made mistakes. There was more pain than I can write here, but we never stopped trying. Come find me if there's an afterlife. I'll be the one with the gray hair and the sharp tongue. Yours always. Myra. P.S. The Xylos stayed. They're not what the dynasty said. Trust them. 2. A data crystal, containing Myra's complete historical archive, everything she had hidden from the dynasty, plus her own memoirs of the fall. Tasha held it like a holy relic. This is the missing piece, she whispered. The history after the history I carried. 3. A child's drawing, crayon on paper. A stick figure in a spaceship waving. Beneath it, in a child's handwriting, Grandma's first husband, the Star Man. Buck folded the drawing carefully and put it in his pocket. He didn't cry, but Pax saw his hands shake. The crew's fractures. Lena, crisis of faith. Lena Ocampo had not spoken since the landing. She sat apart from the others, staring at the sky, a sky with no satellites, no orbital billboards, no dynasty insignia burned into the clouds. Buck found her at sunset. You're quiet, he said. I'm thinking. About. She turned to face him. Her eyes were red. Everything I believed is a lie. The implants, the songs, the history. My mother, she was a dynasty administrator. She personally selected people for re-education. She thought she was helping. She thought the alternative was chaos. And now. Lena's voice cracked. My mother died in 2123. She was executed by the tribunal. I watched the recording. Tasha showed me. My mother begged for mercy. They gave her none. Buck sat beside her. Do you want mercy for her? I don't know. She did terrible things, but she was my mother. That's the hardest part, Buck said. The people who build tyranny aren't monsters. Mostly. They're just people who got comfortable with small cruelties. And by the time they realize what they've done, it's too late to stop. Lena was silent for a long time. Then, I removed my implant on the ship while you were asleep. Buck raised an eyebrow. That's painful. I screamed for an hour. Pax held my hand. She looked at him. For the first time in my life, my thoughts are my own, and I don't know who I am without the dynasty telling me. Buck put a hand on her shoulder. Then you get to find out, that's the gift. She didn't smile, but she didn't cry anymore either. Pax rage finding purpose. Pax found Alara in the garden helping an elderly Xylos harvest something that looked like purple lettuce. "You're not fully human," Pax said. Alara paused. "No, I'm half Xylos. Myra's granddaughter, my grandmother, fell in love with one of them. After the fall." Pax's eyes widened. The alien species the dynasty traded human prisoners to. The same, but the Xylos didn't take those prisoners. They rescued them. The dynasty's story was backwards. The Xylos were trying to sabotage the agreement from the inside. They hid the prisoners, faked the experiments, and used the technology the dynasty gave them to build the root structures, the living buildings, the clean energy, the atmospheric scrubbers. Pax sat down hard on the ground. My mother was taken to a re-education resort. Her personality was overwritten. When I got her out, she didn't know me. She smiled at me like I was a stranger. Alara sat beside them. "I know, the Xylos, they can't restore what was lost, but they can heal what remains. Your mother, is she still alive?" "No, she died in 2085, 5 years before I left. I never got to say goodbye to her, just the shell." Alara took Pax's hand. "Then let me tell you something Myra taught us. The dead don't need your rage, the living do." Pax looked at the ground, then up at the sky at the ghost still humming on the landing field. "I want to stay," Pax said quietly. "After this is over, I want to help build whatever comes next." "The coalition would welcome you," Alara said. Pax nodded. For the first time in years, the rage in their chest felt less like a fire and more like an engine, something that could move them forward instead of burning them up. Tasha, keeper of two histories. Tasha had not left the ship. She sat in the data core, surrounded by screens, the crystal from Myra's box plugged directly into her own subdermal chip. Buck found her there hours later. "You're going to burn out your implants," he said. "Worth it." Her voice was distant, absorbed. "Captain, the archive Myra left, it's complete. The fall of the dynasty, the rebuilding, the Xylos' arrival, it's all here. But there's something else." "What?" Tasha looked up. Her eyes were wide. "The anomaly. The one we were sent to find, it's not dormant. It's been active for 500 years, and it's been talking to the Xylos. They've been hiding its messages because the messages are dangerous." "Dangerous how?" "The anomaly is not a structure. It's a door, and something on the other side wants to come through. The Xylos have been keeping it closed for 500 years. But now," she checked a readout, "now that we're here, the door is opening faster." Buck's blood ran cold. "Because of us." "Because of the ghost. The ship's fold drive, it's a key. The dynasty built it using reverse-engineered Xylos technology. They didn't know what they were making. They just wanted faster travel." Buck sat down heavily. "So we're not explorers, we're lockpicks." Tasha nodded slowly. "And the lock is about to break." "The Xylos and the coalition." "The Xylos." The Xylos were tall, 7 feet on average, with iridescent skin that shifted between blue and green depending on their mood. They had 4 arms, no visible mouth. They communicated through a combination of sound and pheromones, and eyes that contained multiple pupils, each tracking different wavelengths. They had arrived in 2075, just before Buck's launch, a scout ship fleeing a war in their home galaxy. The dynasty had immediately tried to exploit them. The Xylos had played along, pretending to accept human prisoners, while secretly hiding them in underground sanctuaries. After the fall, the Xylos stayed. They had nowhere else to go, their home world had been destroyed, and Earth, even damaged, was beautiful. By 2587, Xylos were integrated into every aspect of human life. Workers, Xylos built the root structures that powered the bioregions. Their biology allowed them to grow technology instead of manufacturing it, buildings that self-repaired, water filters that used living organisms, atmospheric processors that pulled carbon from the air. Healers. Xylos pheromones could accelerate human healing and treat psychological trauma. They couldn't restore overwritten personalities, but they could help survivors find peace. Historians, the Xylos had perfect memory. Every individual remembered everything their ancestors had experienced for 10,000 years. They served as living archives, helping humans never forget the dynasty's crimes. Guardians, the Xylos had been watching the anomaly for 500 years. They understood it better than any human, and they were terrified. The Coalition of Free Bioregions. The coalition was not a government, it was a network. Each bioregion, there were 47 on Earth, plus 12 on Mars and 6 in the asteroid belt, governed itself through local consensus. The coalition existed only to coordinate. Trade, mostly information and art. Physical goods were locally produced. Defense against the anomaly, against any future threats. Migration, humans and Xylos moved freely. Justice, serious crimes were adjudicated by a rotating council of elders from unrelated bioregions. There were no presidents, no kings, no dynasties. The word leader was considered mildly offensive. Who makes decisions? Lena asked, still struggling with the concept. Everyone, Alara said. Slowly, carefully, sometimes it takes years. But when a decision is made, it's made by people who will live with the consequences. That sounds inefficient. It is, but it's also unbreakable. You can't kill a network. You can't corrupt a consensus. You can't buy a community that owns nothing. Lena looked at Pax. Pax looked at Tasha. Tasha looked at Buck. Buck smiled. She's right. The dynasty could be destroyed because it was a single point of failure, a pyramid. Remove the top and the rest crumbles, but a web, you can cut 1,000 strands and it still holds. The Trump legacy in 2587, the continuity. Not everyone accepted the fall. Alara took Buck to a valley in the Appalachian foothills where a small community lived in isolation. They didn't use Xylos technology. They didn't participate in the coalition. They kept to themselves. They call themselves the continuity, Alara said. They're the descendants of dynasty loyalists who escaped the tribunal. Some of them are Trump's distant cousins, name-changers, survivors. Buck watched from a ridge. Below, a group of children were being taught from a book he recognized, The Trump Dynasty, a history of American greatness. The same propaganda he'd seen in 2087. They still believe, he said. About 5,000 of them, Alara said. They're harmless now. No implants, no army, just a cult of memory. Memory can be a weapon, Buck said. Mira taught me that. Alara nodded. The coalition watches them. They're not allowed to hold political office or own technology that could harm others. But we don't persecute them. That's what the dynasty would have done. Buck felt a cold knot in his stomach. And if they try to rise again? Then we remember, Alara said simply, and we resist, together. Part 3, The Door. 2587, The Mountains of Georgia. The assassination. They struck 3 hours before dawn. The continuity had not spent 500 years doing nothing. They had built networks not of technology, the coalition monitored that, but of blood. Descendants of dynasty loyalists had infiltrated every bioregion, waiting for a sign. The sign was Buck's arrival. Target 1, Mira Chen. She was walking back from the Xylos healing grove when the dart hit her neck. Not poison, suppressant. A drug that blocked her Xylos half, sending her into immediate seizure. She fell among the roots, her skin flickering between human brown and Xylos iridescence, her multiple pupils dilating wildly. The assassins, 4 humans in coalition worker uniforms, dragged her into the forest. Target 2, Pax Johnson. Pax was in the Ghost's engine bay repairing damage from the fold. They never heard the shot. A sonic stunner dropped them mid-weld. They woke in darkness, wrists bound, head pounding. Target 3, Lena Ocampo. Lena was the hardest to take. She had trained her whole life for combat dynasty special forces before her implant was removed. She fought. 2 assassins were dead before the third jabbed a sedative into her thigh. She took down a 4th with her teeth before the world went black. Target 4, Tasha Korapati. Tasha was in the data core, still lost in Myra's archive. She saw them coming on the internal sensors. She had time to send one message, a single word to Buck's wrist calm. Run. Then the door dissolved, Xylos made acid through the hull, and hands pulled her into the dark. Buck found the message at dawn. He had been with the Xylos warriors planning a reconnaissance of the continuity sanctuary. When his wrist comm buzzed with Tasha's word, he was already running. Too late. The Ghost was breached. The crew was gone. And on the main view screen, a single line of text. The dynasty does not die. It waits. Come to the mountain, Captain, bring the key, or your crew dies one by one. Buck turned to the Xylos leader, whose name was Valen, translation, Stone that waits. How many of them? Valen's pheromones smelled of cold anger. More than we knew. The continuity has been patient. 500 years of breeding, of hiding, of waiting for a moment of weakness. The coalition's openness, its trust, was their cover. They used our freedom against us, Buck said. Yes. Valen's skin rippled to deep red, the color of grief. That is what tyranny always does. The hidden Trumpists. The continuity's sanctuary was not a bunker or a compound. It was a living mountain, a Xylos root structure that the continuity had captured and corrupted generations ago. The roots, once green and glowing, now pulsed with an angry orange light. Inside, 5,000 people. Not all fighters. Most were families, children, elders, people who had been raised on lies and never given the chance to learn otherwise. But at the core, 200 hardcore loyalists led by a woman who called herself President Kira Trump IX. She was 52 years old, gaunt, with the dead eyes of absolute certainty. She stood on a balcony of corrupted roots, looking down at Buck as the Xylos warriors breached the outer perimeter. Captain Rogers, she called. You're late. Your crew is alive. For now. Buck stepped forward, unarmed, hands raised. Valen had told him not to. Buck ignored him. Let them go, Buck said. This is between you and me. Kira IX laughed. You think this is personal. You're a symbol, Captain, the man who left, the man who ran. While we suffered, while our ancestors were executed, while our history was erased, you were frozen in space, dreaming of your wife. She's dead. Everyone you love is dead. That's what happens when you abandon your people. She leaned over the railing. The dynasty never abandoned anyone. We kept order. We kept peace. And we were murdered for it. You murdered billions. Necessary sacrifices. You wouldn't understand. You're soft. You believed in democracy. She spat the word like poison. Buck felt the rage building, the same rage Pax carried, the same rage Lena was learning to transform. But he didn't let it show. The anomaly is opening, he said. You have the fold drive. If you use it as a key, you don't know what will come through. I know exactly what will come through. Kira IX smiled. We've been listening for 500 years. The Xylos aren't the only ones who can hear the door. The thing on the other side, it wants to come through, and it's promised us everything. Earth, the stars, revenge. The thing on the other side is lying. The thing on the other side is power, and power doesn't lie, it takes. She raised her hand. Behind her, the corrupted roots parted, revealing the fold drive stolen from the ghost, now humming with orange light connected to the mountain's core. Watch, Kira IX said. Watch your world end, and know that the Trump Dynasty built the door. The war that nearly destroys the new Earth. The fold drive activated, but not as a key to the Uit cloud anomaly. The continuity had spent generations reversing the Xylos technology, turning a door out there into a door right here. The mountain became the gateway. The sky split open. Above Georgia, a wound in reality, a swirling vortex of orange and black, crackling with energy that made the Xylos warriors fall to their knees in pain. The roots of the mountain screamed. And then they came through, not the thing from the anomaly. Continuity reinforcements. Hundreds of them, soldiers in Dynasty-era armor, carrying weapons that hadn't been seen in 500 years. They poured from the vortex, firing at everything that moved. The war for 2587 had begun. The Battle of Georgia lasted 72 hours. The coalition was not a military. It had no standing army, no chain of command, no weapons of mass destruction. What it had was everyone. Within an hour of the vortex opening, messengers on Xylos-grown beetles, the fastest transportation on the planet, had spread the word across the continent. Within 6 hours, volunteers from every bioregion were arriving. Farmers with Xylos-enhanced tools, healers with sedative darts, old veterans of the Harvest Uprising who were now over 100 years old but still remembered how to fight. Within 24 hours, the continuity had been pushed back to the mountain. But they had taken half of Georgia with them, villages burned, root structures poisoned, thousands dead. Pax's moment. Pax escaped during the first hour. A guard got careless, and Pax used a welding torch to burn through their bonds. They found Tasha in the next cell, unconscious but alive. They carried her out through a collapsed root tunnel, fighting off 3 continuity soldiers with nothing but the torch and a broken pipe. By the time they reached coalition lines, Pax's hands were burned to the bone. They didn't stop fighting. Lena's moment. Lena was held in the mountain's peak, tortured for information about the ghost systems. She gave nothing. When the coalition breached the outer walls, she killed her guard with his own knife and spent the next 12 hours leading a squad of Xylos warriors through the mountain's lower levels, freeing prisoners and sabotaging continuity communications. She moved like the soldier she had been trained to be, but this time she chose the side. Tasha's moment. Tasha woke in a coalition field hospital, Pax's burned hands in hers. Her first words, "The archive. Did they take it?" It was still in her subdermal chip. The continuity hadn't known to look there. Tasha spent the rest of the battle uploading Mira's complete history to every Xylos root structure on the continent, turning the coalition's communication network into a weapon of truth. Every continuity lie was answered with a fact. Every propaganda broadcast was drowned out by Mira's voice, 500 years dead, still teaching. Buck's moment. Buck didn't fight, he hunted. While the battle raged, he climbed the mountain alone, using tunnels only the Xylos knew, moving in silence, killing only when necessary. He reached Kira IX's chamber 71 hours into the battle. She was alone. The fold drive was still humming. The vortex was still open, but smaller now, unstable. "You're too late, Captain," she said. "The thing on the other side is coming, and when it arrives, it will finish what we started." Buck looked at her, this woman who had never known a world without the dream of tyranny, this descendant of a family that had destroyed billions. "No," he said, "it won't." He reached into his jacket and pulled out the child's drawing, the one from Myra's box, the stick figure in the spaceship, the words, "Grandma's first husband, the Star Man." "I'm not here to kill you," Buck said. "I'm here to show you what you're fighting for. A child drew this. A child who never knew the dynasty. A child who grew up in a world without presidents, without implants, without fear. That child, my descendant, is alive because Mira remembered, and because people chose to build instead of destroy." Kira IX stared at the drawing. For a moment, just a moment, something flickered in her dead eyes. Then she pressed the emergency trigger on the fold drive. The vortex exploded open. The anomaly opens wide. Not orange this time. White, pure, blinding white light, but not harsh, warm, like sunlight through leaves, like the first day of spring. The vortex expanded until it filled the sky above Georgia, visible from every continent. Every human in Xylos on Earth looked up and saw it. And then they saw what came through. Not a thing, a fleet. Ships, hundreds of them, emerged from the white light. Not continuity vessels, not dynasty relics. These were beautiful, sleek, organic, glowing with the same warm light as the vortex. They moved in perfect formation like a school of fish or a flock of birds, silent and deliberate. The largest ship descended toward the mountain. It landed in the valley below, crushing corrupted roots, sending continuity soldiers fleeing. A ramp extended. Figures emerged. They were human, but different not in body but in bearing. They walked with a confidence that came not from power over others but from peace within themselves. They wore simple clothes, no armor, no weapons. At their front, a man. He was older, maybe 70, maybe 80, with gray hair, a weathered face, and eyes that had seen too much. He wore a plain gray tunic with a single insignia, a star inside a circle. Buck, standing on the mountain balcony, felt his heart stop. The man looked up at him and smiled. "Hello, younger me," said Admiral William Buck Rogers. The parallel future corrected. They met in the ruined chamber of Kira IX, who had been subdued by the newcomers without a single shot fired. They had simply asked her to stop, and something in their voice made her comply. The older Buck sat across from the younger Buck. The resemblance was uncanny, same jaw, same eyes, same tired set of the shoulders, but the older Buck had something the younger lacked: resolution. The piece of a story that had already ended, but not happily. "How is this possible?" the younger Buck asked. "You're me, but older." The older Buck nodded. "I am you, but not from a parallel timeline where you stayed on Earth. I'm from a parallel timeline where you launched just as you did. The same launch, the same fold, the same 500-year jump." "Then how are you much years older than me?" "Because in my timeline the fold took 700 years, not 500. We arrived in 2787, not 2587. 2 extra centuries passed while we were in transit. My crew, my versions of Lena, Pax, Tasha, they're all 2 centuries older than yours. Some of them didn't survive the extended cryo." The younger Buck felt the floor shift beneath him. "So you're not from a timeline where I stayed. You're from a timeline where the journey was longer." "Yes, and in that extra time we learned. We studied the anomaly from the other side, because when we arrived in 2787, the door had already been open for 200 years. The continuity had won in your timeline. They opened the door in 2587, just as they're trying to do now. And something came through." "What?" The older Buck's face darkened. Not a fleet, not an army, a silence. The thing on the other side of the anomaly wasn't a species or an empire, it was the end of choice itself. The continuity thought they were summoning allies, they were summoning oblivion. Every human in Xylos who passed through the door came back. Empty. No memory, no will, no self, just bodies that followed orders. The younger buck felt sick. The Trump Dynasty, they would have become puppets. They became the first puppets. Kira IX opened the door and the silence consumed her within minutes. Then it spread. By 2600, Earth was a planet of shells. By 2700, the silence had reached Mars. By 2787, when we arrived, there was nothing left to save. But you're here, your fleet is here, you're not empty. The older buck smiled, a sad, tired smile. Because we didn't come through the door. We came around it. The anomaly connects timelines, but it's not the only path. We spent 200 years in the space between timelines, a place the Xylos call the Gulf of Echoes. We learned to navigate without touching the door. And we built a fleet using materials that don't exist in any single timeline, fragments of dead universes, echoes of choices never made. He gestured at the white vortex above them. That door was opened by the continuity in your timeline. In my timeline, it opened 200 years earlier because your continuity succeeded. We've come back, not to change our past, that's impossible, but to change your future, to stop the door from opening here. The younger buck understood. You're not from a parallel timeline where I died. You're from a parallel timeline where I succeeded too late. Yes, and now we succeed together, or not at all. The older buck's crew. The older buck's fleet carried the echoes of the younger buck's crew, 200 years older, 200 years wearier. Admiral Lena Ocampo, age 224, cryoextended. In her timeline, she never removed her implant. She served the continuity for 50 years before the silence took her will. She was rescued by the older buck from a shell colony. She still has nightmares about the things she did while empty. When she sees the younger Lena free, defiant, her implant gone, she weeps. Engineer Pax Johnson, age 219. In their timeline, they died in the Battle of 2587, but were revived by Xylos healing arts that no longer exist in the younger buck's timeline. They carry the memories of death. They do not recommend it. When they see the younger Pax's hands burned but healing, rage turned to purpose, they say only, don't waste it. Archivist Tasha Korapati, age 226. In her timeline, she uploaded Myra's archive too late. The silence corrupted it. She spent 150 years trying to recover fragments. Her subdermal chip now contains the complete history of 3 timelines, including the one where everything went wrong. When she sees the younger Tasha still whole, still hopeful, she gives her a second crystal. For the next door, she says. These are not the same people as the younger buck's crew. They are echoes, older, wearier, damaged by centuries of loss. But the meeting is both joyful and devastating, ending it forever. The older buck stood and addressed the gathered coalition leaders, Xylos elders, and surviving continuity members, including Kira IX, now in chains. Here is the truth, he said. The Trump dynasty was never just a family. It was the idea that some people are born to rule and others are born to obey. That idea is a virus. It jumps from host to host, family to family, species to species. In my timeline, it infected the stars. In yours, it almost died. But the continuity is the last carrier. He looked at Kira IX. You think you're fighting for your ancestors. You're not. You're fighting for a ghost. The original Trumps, Kira III, Donald IV, they didn't care about you. They cared about power. You are not their legacy. You are their debris. Kira IX said nothing, but tears, real tears, ran down her face. The older buck turned to the younger buck. The anomaly is a door between parallel timelines. Every choice creates a branch. Most branches die. Some survive. But when a branch produces a silence that threatens all branches, that's when the door opens. Not to let something in, but to let something out. The fleet, the younger buck said. The fleet is the immune response of the multiverse. We go where the silence spreads. We neutralize it. And then, he smiled, we return to the Gulf of Echoes. There are other doors, other timelines, other places where the silence is waiting. What happens to you? The older Buck looked at his younger self, 36 years old, still full of fight, still full of love for a woman who had been dust for 500 years. We continue. The Gulf of Echoes is not a grave. It's a home for those who have no timeline left to return to. We will watch. We will wait. And when another door opens somewhere, someone, we will be there. Younger Buck nodded slowly. You're not dying, you're leaving. Yes, and that's harder, but it's also better. The closing. The two Bucks stood together on the mountain's peak, looking up at the white vortex. The older Buck raised his hand. The fleet responded, ships turning in formation, aiming toward the vortex. The door closes in 10 minutes, he said. After that, the continuity's key will be destroyed. The Trump Dynasty, in every timeline where it still lingers, will have no door to open. And your fleet? My fleet will return to the Gulf of Echoes. We will wait. We will remember. And if the silence ever returns to any timeline, we will come back. Younger Buck felt tears on his face. I didn't ask for any of this. No one asks for the weight of history. It just lands on you. The older Buck put a hand on his younger self's shoulder. You did well, William. You ran, yes, but you ran towards something. And because you ran, Myra lived. Because you ran, Alara was born. Because you ran, he gestured at the green world below, all of this exists. The vortex began to shrink. The older Buck turned to the fleet. All hands, he said, and his voice echoed across the valley, heard by every human and Xylos on Earth. We are not fleeing. We are returning. We go now to the Gulf of Echoes to watch and to wait. It has been an honor. The fleet lifted as one. Hundreds of ships, glowing with warm white light, rose toward the shrinking vortex. The older Buck walked up the ramp of his flagship, then stopped. He turned to his younger self one last time. Myra, he said, in my timeline I never got to say goodbye. I arrived 200 years too late, but you got to read her letter. You got to see her grave. Tell her for me. Tell her I loved her until the end of the world, both of them. Younger Buck nodded, unable to speak. The older Buck smiled. Then he boarded the ship, the ramp closed, and the flagship rose to join the fleet. The vortex shrank to a pinprick of light, and then, with a sound that was not a sound, a feeling that was not a feeling, it closed. The sky was blue again. The older Buck's final transmission. As the vortex closed, a final message echoed across every frequency, not just on Earth, but across timelines, across the Gulf of Echoes, across the spaces between worlds. This is Admiral William Buck Rogers to all timelines. The door is closed. The silence is held back for now. Remember us not as heroes. Remember us as the ones who tried. That's enough. To my younger self, don't waste the life we were given. Love hard, fight smart. Remember everything. To Myra, I'm still looking at the stars. I never stopped. End transmission. The signal faded. The sky was quiet. And somewhere in the Gulf of Echoes, a fleet of ghosts sailed on, waiting for the next door, the next silence, the next chance to try again. Epilogue, 1 year later. Buck sat on a hill in what had been Georgia, looking at a grave. Myra's grave. It was old, 500 years old, but the Xylos had kept it tended. Wildflowers grew around the stone. A single word was carved into it. Remembered. He touched the stone. I'm here, he said quietly. Finally, I'm sorry it took so long. Behind him, Alara approached. She was pregnant, her first child, Buck's great-great-great-great-great-grandchild. She would have loved you, Alara said. I know, Buck smiled. I remember, both versions of me remember. The one who launched and arrived on time. the one who launched and arrived too late. They both loved her. Alara sat beside him. Do you feel different after meeting him? Buck considered. I feel less alone, like there's a version of me out there watching, waiting, not dead, just elsewhere. They sat in silence for a while. Below them, the valley was alive, new root structures growing, children playing, Xylos and humans working side by side. The continuity had been disbanded. Kira IX was in healing, not prison, the Coalition's choice. Tyranny ends when we stop being cruel to the cruel, Alara had said. Pax was now a teacher, showing young Xylos how to weld. Lena was a mediator, traveling between bioregions to resolve disputes without violence. Tasha had become the Coalition's historian, merging Myra's archive with the crystal from the older Tasha, a complete record of everything that had been lost and found across 3 timelines. And Buck was 37 now, young enough to keep going, old enough to know what mattered. He stood up, brushed dirt from his knees, and looked at the sky, the clear, blue, ordinary sky. No vortex, no fleet, no door, just the world healing, growing, remembering. I'll be back, Myra, he said to the grave. Not for a while, there's still work to do, but I'll be back. He walked down the hill with Alara, her hand in his. Behind them, the wind carried wildflower seeds across the grave, and the name, remembered, faded into the grass, not erased, but integrated. Part of the soil, part of the story, part of everything that came next. The crystal in the ground. Before he left the hill, Buck knelt and buried the data crystal the older Tasha had given him, the one containing the navigational records of the Gulf of Echoes, the ability to move between timelines without opening the door. He buried it at the base of Myra's grave. Not hidden, planted, growing, waiting for the next pilot, for the next door, for the next time someone needed to try again. Final words. The only tyranny that lasts is the one we forget is there, so remember. Mira Chen, 2091. We are not heroes, we are the ones who tried. Admiral William Buck Rogers, 2787, transmitted to 2587. Don't waste it. Pax Johnson, the elder to the younger. The end.
500 years from tyranny. 500 years to remember. Never again!